Outcasted OC. Viewer discretion is advised. Incoming transmission in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, it's Courtney here from the Outcasted OC Podcast, and welcome to the Monday Night Raw recap. You know I don't like to waste time with introductions, so let's just jump straight into it. So Monday Night Raw this week starts off with main event Jey Uso coming out to cut a promo and talk to everybody. So he comes out and he goes ahead and says that main event Jey Uso is now in your city. It feels so good to be out on my own, out of the bloodline, but it also feels so good to be on Monday Night Raw. Out of nowhere, Kevin Owens' music hits and he's looking really confused on how he's going to approach this with Jey. They stare down at each other the entire way as Kevin Owens is coming into the ring. Kevin Owens goes ahead and says, I think I know, what you meant to say is that Jey Uso, you're not on Monday Night Raw at the moment, you're actually on the Kevin Owens show. And he goes ahead and he says, look, I've been there, I know how it feels and I know what you're going through. I've done a lot of bad things to good people during my time and I've found myself needing to change, and it's really hard to earn people's trust and earn people's respect. And he said it takes a long time, and he says some people in that locker room still don't trust me. And he goes ahead and says Matt Riddle and Drew McIntyre are two people in that locker room that do not want you here. And he says, Jey Uso doesn't belong here. He says Cody Rhodes is giving you a shot, Jey. And Sammy did the same for you too. That's it. But you have a long way to go to earn my trust and respect. And you have a lot to show to prove that you are not the same scumbag that you were when you were running around with the bloodline. And then the Judgment Day music hits. And Finn Balor goes ahead and says, whoa. I don't believe what I'm hearing right now. Nobody speaks to main event Jey Uso the way that you are. And he goes ahead and says, Jey, why do you feel like you have to prove yourself to Kevin Owens? You don't have to prove yourself to me. You know why? Because I'm Grand Slam Finn and I respect you. All of us in the Judgment Day respect you. And Damian Priest goes ahead and says, Kevin, you don't speak for Judgment Day and you also don't speak for the locker room. And he says that we run the show around here. And says, Jey, I get it. If you need time to think it over, the Judgment Day door is always open. And Dominic Mysterio goes ahead and says that the Judgment Day have always been there for me through my highs and my lows. Obviously, as we know, during Dominic's communication, the crowd's always booing. That's kind of what I picked up on what he said, though. And Damian goes ahead and says, enough. What happened to our match that we were supposed to have? And Kevin Owens goes ahead and says, well, Sami Zayn's not here, but I'm happy to fight all three of you on my own. And Jey Uso looks at Kevin and goes, hey, don't worry about Sami. I'm here too. If you want me to have an opportunity to prove myself to you and earn your respect, let me help you out. Let us do main event Jey Uso and Kevin Owens versus the Judgment Day. Kevin Owens takes some time to think about it and he goes, all right, let's do it. And they just start brawling between all three of them. So obviously the Judgment Day and Jey and Kevin, they all start brawling together. Then we hit an ad break. After the ad break, we get the match between Jey and Kevin versus the Judgment Day. Now, Jey and Damian start off this match. There's some really good spots in here where Damian goes ahead and blocks Jey Uso in the corner, trying to isolate him away from Kevin, but then Finn ends up tagging in and they end up jostling and tackling back and forth. Jey Uso hits a really nice takedown and then Kevin Owens ends up tagging in. Finn Balor's punching Kevin Owens in the corner and then Finn Balor decides to go and attack the knee of Kevin Owens. This is played upon quite a lot during the match as well too. Then Damian starts to go ahead and attack that same knee. During this as well too, Kevin ends up hitting like a really nice single leg kick on Damian as well too, and then Jey Uso ends up hitting Damian Priest with a really nice crossbody, and then Jey Uso ends up hitting Damian with a really good Samoan drop as well too, and then Jey jumps over the top rope and takes out the entirety of Judgment Day, so obviously Finn and Damian as well too. But then after the commercial break, Judgment Day is back in control and they are back on the attack within the match as well too. Jey Uso kicks Finn Balor straight in the face, but then Finn Balor ends up stomping on Jey Uso. Jey hits a really nice neck breaker and then ends up hitting a splash, but Finn Balor gets his knees up. KO's selling this knee injury the entire match as well too, which is quite cool. But then Kevin Owens ends up hitting a tornado DDT onto Damian Priest from the second rope, and then ends up hitting a brainbuster onto Finn Balor, which gets a second count or 2 count. Damian Priest goes and attacks Jey Uso. Then Jey looks like he's trying to set up that super kick that he does between him and Damian, but he ends up oh my gosh, I could have sworn I knew this was going to happen, but he ends up kicking KO with the super kick instead, which obviously was by accident, but because Kevin Owens is still trying to get the trust of Jey Uso, it looked very much intentional. Finn Balor capitalizes on the opportunity and hits the coup de grace and ends up taking the win. So Finn Balor and Damian Priest win the match. Jey Uso's trying to apologize to Kevin Owens while Kevin is sitting in the corner of the ring, but then Kevin rolls out of the ring and walks away. Then we see a video recap from Raquel and Rhea from Payback, and then we see Raquel is backstage warming up and she is talking to Natalya. I'm happy that she was only talking to Natalya and we couldn't hear anything because I don't want to see Natalya on my screen. But secondly, one thing that I get really annoyed with about WWE is the amount of recaps that are in Monday Night Raw. I feel like they don't do it to intentionally make us feel stupid, but they pad the show with recap, backstage segment where it's like, we know there's a rematch happening between these two because we've followed this since Payback. We don't need you giving us a recap from the match that we saw 9 days ago to know why this is a rematch. But anyway, I digress. Then we see that Kevin Owens is limping backstage after the match, and Jey goes up to him and is trying to apologize and say, look man, it was an accident, honestly, I'm so sorry. And Kevin Owens is very visibly upset, he's not happy, and he goes ahead and he says, why don't you go ahead and find your new bloodline over on Monday Night Raw? And it's in Judgment Day's locker room. Then we see a video recap from the Gunther and Chad Gable match from last week. Now this was the match that main evented Monday Night Raw last week. That was the defining moment for Gunther in his Intercontinental Championship reign. This was the moment where he became the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. After this, we get a glimpse backstage and there's a really nice Mercedes-Benz car rolling up and it stops and we see Ludwig and Giovanni jump out, and then we end up seeing Gunther coming out of the car as well too. They're all dressed in some really nice suits, looking really fly, obviously because there's a celebration ceremony happening for Gunther's Intercontinental Championship reign, which we'll get into later on when that happens. Then we had a really quick, really kind of confusing match. I don't know if there was any form of build up to this match, but we had a match between The Miz and Akira Tozawa. Straight away, I think Akira was looking really strong in this match, but then The Miz ends up getting super frustrated and takes all of his frustrations out on Akira. He ends up knocking Akira's head, which is causing Akira to kind of fall down. Akira gets back up and tries to hit Miz with a few chops, and then Akira ends up catching The Miz with a boot to the face, but then The Miz ends up getting into like this next gear, turning into like a crazy mode, and ends up hitting 3 skull-crushing finales on Akira Tozawa to come away with the win. It was referenced on commentary that he is going to be having a match against LA Knight this week on Friday Night SmackDown, so I'm assuming that the frustrations are kind of just brewing because of the frustrations and the jealousy he has towards LA Knight. Then we see Byron Saxton is backstage and he quickly catches up with Raquel Rodriguez like ahead of her match for tonight and just basically asks for some of her thoughts, and Raquel goes ahead and says that, you know, Rhea may be the most dominant woman in that ring and people lose the match to Rhea before the match even starts due to fear, and that Rhea's reality is going to be much worse than the nightmare that she has or that she is, and that she's going to get a taste of her own medicine. Then we see Jackie Redmond backstage with Shayna Baszler, and she's kind of just asking a few questions about the match that they had last week, obviously between Shayna and Zoe. Shayna goes ahead and says, you know, Zoe did surprise me because most people tap out of their Karafuda clutch pretty quickly. And then Chelsea Green comes in and she goes, I know, right? The way you beat Zoe last week is the same way that you beat Ronda and sent her packing. And she says that Piper Niven's not cleared and I'm looking for a new tag team partner. Do you want to be my co-partner? We're really good peers. And Shayna goes ahead and says, do you think that we can be peers? And she goes, let's meet in the ring and I can show you limb by limb how big the gap is of us being peers. And Chelsea's like, fine, you'll regret this. And then she turns around And she ends up seeing Piper Niven, and she's like, oh my god, Piper, I totally knew you were coming tonight, and starts like trying to talk to her. And then Piper rips one of the titles off Chelsea, and she's like throwing it over her shoulder, and she's like, I'm medically cleared. Then we get the introduction of Imperium coming out to the ring. Now there's a couple of pillars set up and a podium, and this is for the celebration ceremony for Gunther. So Ludwig Kaiser goes ahead and welcomes Gunther out to the ring as the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. Gunther goes ahead and says, to the surprise of nobody, I have rewritten history, and he says that he's the longest reigning and the greatest IC champion of all time and of history. And he said that he would say some nice things about the legends that have held the belt before, but he's got nothing nice to say because he's had to elevate this title to new heights that nobody has ever seen before. And he says that he's got no competition that's left for this title and that he's basically competing against himself. Chad Gable comes out and says that last week we had a main event for the ages, and goes ahead and says that, you know, that you're a celebrity now, congratulations. And Gunther goes ahead and says, if you have anything to say, just come and say it to my face. And Chad Gable goes ahead and says, I saw you after that match. I came so close to beating you, and I saw the look on my family's face and the tears that you caused. That lit a massive fire under me that won't burn out until I make this right. And he says, I will beat you again. I'm winning that championship because my daughter's smile means more to me. And Gunther goes ahead and says that you want another opportunity. For what? You want to use your children as bait to be able to get what you want? You're a terrible father. And then Chad goes ahead and starts attacking Gunther, and then Ludwig and Giovanni start to back up, obviously, Imperium, because Otis is coming out and starting to get involved, and we end up seeing Chad and Gunther brawling, but then Tommaso Ciampa runs out and ends up coming to the save of Alpha Academy with a chair. So we're starting to see some formation there. We're starting to see something happen between Alpha Academy and Tommaso. Then we see a video recap from the New Day Viking Raiders match, which happened 2 weeks ago. See how I mentioned earlier about all these video recaps that we're getting, but they're like from 2-3 weeks ago. I regularly watch Raw, so I know what I'm looking for. It just really annoys me that WWE tries to question my intelligence, and I know that they do this for the casual wrestling fan who might not know what's going on, needs a bit of context, but as a wrestling fan who watches this all the time, I really do not need any extra context. Then we see Drew McIntyre and Xavier Woods backstage, and they're quickly just talking, and Xavier goes ahead and says, what's up with you talking trash about Kofi? And Drew goes ahead and says, you know, Kofi could talk to me himself if he's that much of a man. He could go ahead and say it to me. He doesn't need, why are you talking for him, kind of thing. And Xavier goes ahead and says that you're jealous of Kofi because he won WrestleMania with 96,000 or a certain amount of fans in attendance for his moment, but you had none. And Drew goes ahead and says, do you want to fight? Because I don't really want to hurt you, but that will be what happens, and it will not be an accident. Then we see that the Alpha Academy and Tommaso Ciampa are backstage, and Jackie comes up and starts talking to them and is just asking about the alliance that's been formed and kind of what's going on. And Tommaso goes ahead and says, you know, Adam Pearce said to me that I need to seize the moment. Gunther's celebration ceremony seemed like the best moment because there's no bigger moment. And Chad Gable goes ahead and says that he hates Imperium, and he hates him so much. And then Otis goes ahead and suggests, how about we do a 6-man tag between Imperium and Alpha Academy? And Chad's like, normally you kind of say some silly things, but like, I really like that idea. Then we have the match between Xavier Woods and Drew McIntyre. Now, this was a really good match straight away from the beginning. Xavier Woods was on the attack from the start. Drew McIntyre ends up hitting a Glasgow kiss onto Xavier Woods. There's a couple of chops coming in from Drew McIntyre and a beautiful sequence from Xavier Woods. During this entire match, Xavier Woods hits some really good sequences, which I will reference when I come to them, but I just want to say, like, he's incredibly talented, and I feel like he gets heavily overlooked because he's always seen as being in a tag team. But this match, I think, proved to me that he's a phenomenal in-ring singles wrestler. Anyway, let's get back to it. Drew McIntyre ends up clobbering Xavier. Xavier flies over the top rope, but then Drew ends up catching Xavier and slings him over the commentary table. Then we hit the commercial break. After the break, it looks like Drew is trying to set up a suplex for Xavier, but then Xavier ends up reversing it onto Drew in the powerbomb form. Now, they're kind of on the second rope when this is happening, so the amount of force that would have been put into that powerbomb, insane. Xavier ends up hitting a leg drop onto Drew McIntyre, which gets a 2 count. Drew hits a belly to belly, then followed by a neck breaker to a kip up, and has this kind of look in his eye where he's turning a bit crazy. His hair's kind of a little bit more over his face. Drew ends up trying to set up the Claymore, but then Xavier ends up kicking Drew, and then Drew ends up hitting Xavier with some really nasty chops. A couple of beautiful sequences coming in from Xavier. They were just insane. I really enjoyed them. Drew ends up hitting the Claymore, which ends up giving him the win on this match. So Xavier ends up losing this match. Drew McIntyre comes away with the win. As I said, I think you definitely need to go and watch this match because the sequencing that came in from Xavier was just insane. Then we end up seeing Rhea Ripley is preparing backstage, strapping up her hands before her match with Raquel later on, which we end up finding out is going to be main eventing. It's awesome to see the women main eventing for a big match as well too, especially since the title's on the line as well. Then we see that Cody Rhodes is coming out to cut a promo, and he goes ahead and says, let's talk about main event Jey Uso. Dominic Mysterio ends up interrupting, and he has JD McDonough by his side. So, very interesting what's going on there. Dom goes ahead and says, Cody, I'll tell you what I want to talk about. I'm happy that you brought main event Jey Uso over to Monday Night Raw, because I think that Jey Uso is going to join Judgment Day, and says, you'll look like a fool if he doesn't, and there's not a thing that you can do about it. And Cody ends up hitting Dominic Mysterio, and then JD and Dom end up trying to double team Cody. Cody ends up turning it around though and hitting a Cody Cutter and a two crossroads actually, onto Dominic Mysterio. Very interesting to see that Cody didn't really get to say much about, Jey Uso coming over to Monday Night Raw and the reasons why. We still haven't really found out as well too who's going over to Friday Night SmackDown. I don't know what they're going to do with that. Then we see Jey Uso is walking backstage, and Drew ends up running into Jey and goes ahead and says, I've got one last piece of business that I want to handle with you. I don't trust you. And Jay's like, cool. And Drew's like, cool? You can't stand on your own 2 feet because you've been a twin your entire life, so you've been able to rely on him and rely on the tag team. You've been able to rely on the bloodline to be able to get all that work done and obviously to have people support you, and you're potentially looking strong towards going into Judgment Day. And then Jey Uso turns around and just says, pull up next week and let me show you. So the match between Jey Uso and Drew McIntyre is set for next week on Monday Night Raw. Then we see the match between Chelsea Green and Shayna Baszler. Now, this was quite a short match. Piper Niven was ringside, obviously, to support Chelsea. Straight away, Shayna Baszler kind of goes up to Piper Niven and tries to intimidate her. Shayna Baszler ends up hitting a back suplex on Chelsea Green and ends up stomping Chelsea's elbow as well, too. Shayna ends up setting an armbar up on Chelsea, then Piper ends up grabbing Chelsea so she doesn't end up tapping out. There's a really good steer-off moment between Piper Niven and Shayna Baszler outside of the ring. Chelsea ends up trying to capitalize on this moment and end up trying to roll up on Shayna, which gets her a 2 count. Shayna Baszler ends up hitting this move called the Exterminatus, I think it's called. Michael Cole kind of talked about it later on, so I'll explain a little bit about that at the very end. And then, so Shayna Baszler ends up coming away with the win. Piper and Shayna end up brawling, and then Zoe Stark ends up running out and kicks Piper Niven, kind of coming to the defense of Shayna Baszler. And then Zoe and Piper are kind of staring at each other, and then Zoe's like, get out, get out kind of thing. We end up finding that the move, the Exterminatus, was actually Ronda Rousey's version of Piper's Pit, which I didn't actually pick up on that move until Michael Cole had referenced it. So it's kind of cool that Shayna's got a new move in her arsenal when she feels as though she wants to pull it out. But I'm kind of confused because Shayna Baszler was kind of saying she didn't really want to be a tag team wrestler anymore. But then you've got someone like Zoe Stark instantly aligning herself with... I don't know what's going on. Then we had a promo from Shinsuke Nakamura. Now, Shinsuke went ahead and said, Seth Rollins, do you feel like a champion? You are not honourable. Would people still sing your song if they remember all of the things that you've done? And then we get like a visual of Seth Rollins, like slapping Roman Reigns in the back with the chair, obviously when he turned on the Shield. And Shinsuke goes ahead and says that your road to success is lined with bodies of people who trusted you, and said the weak exist to be consumed by the strong. Seth Rollins not only deceives, lies, manipulates, brings shame on his family, he's got no remorse. And Shinsuke says, I will strip you of your title and I will expose you for the lies that you claim to stand for. Your words mean nothing and I will challenge you when I feel like it. Then we see Seth Rollins make his way out to the ring to cut a live promo because Shinsuke's was not live, therefore we get to see Seth live. Anyway, it's not the point. Seth goes ahead and welcomes everybody to Monday Night Raw, and he goes ahead and says he is a visionary, he is a revolutionary, and he is Seth freaking Rollins. And he says that, yeah, he is a liar, a deceiver, and a manipulator. He's all those things. But he's also a father and a fighter and the world heavyweight champion. And he said, it's taken him a long time because he did not know who he was. When he was with the Authority, people would always lie to his face all the time. So he decided to become a messiah. And that didn't work. And he was continuing to build this facade, and he was always trying to hide himself from people, but he didn't realize that people just wanted him to be him, which is why people love him and people sing his song because, for the first time he can go home and he can look at his daughter in his eyes and he can feel at peace with his past and he can look towards his future. And he said that he came here to fight tonight and that management, kind of don't really want him to be fighting because they want him to slow down. But he said he's a workhorse and he needs to feel like he can run free. So he goes ahead and he mentions last week he called out Shinsuke Nakamura and Shinsuke said no. And Shinsuke likes to play mind games. So you want a World Heavyweight Championship shot. Then he takes the belt off and puts it on in the ring and goes ahead and says, come and get it. Shinsuke's music hits, everyone's getting really excited because we think we're going to have this match, but then no one ends up coming out when Shinsuke ends up, his music hits the chorus part. Then we end up seeing a video of Ricochet getting beaten down by Shinsuke Nakamura. And Shinsuke's like, hey man, look, Seth, this is really bad timing because, you're not cleared to fight. And so I've gone ahead and I've fought already. And he says that he'll fight when he's ready. Then we see a backstage segment of Jey Uso walking around backstage and we see Finn Balor running into him and says, things got crazy out there and we're professionals, and says, what happens in the ring stays in the ring. But he goes ahead and he asks what's going on with Kevin Owens and Drew McIntyre. And he says, are they not fans of you? And he goes ahead and says, do you know who is a fan of you? Myself, Damien, Dominic, Rhea. And Jey Uso goes, for real? And Finn's like, the door for the Judgment Day is always open. Then we see the match, the 6-man tag between Imperium and the Alpha Academy, as well as Tommaso Ciampa. So straight away from the beginning, Tommaso and Giovanni start the match. Tommaso hits a really nice side headlock on Giovanni, which is then followed by a big right. Ludwig Kaiser ends up hitting Chad Gable because Chad Gable gets tagged in. Chad Gable's running the ropes and then Ludwig ends up grabbing the rope, causing Chad Gable to fall outside of the ring. Chad tries to hit a suplex, but then Ludwig ends up hitting a really nice clothesline, and Imperium start triple teaming Chad Gable. Go to the commercial break. Gunther is chopping Chad Gable when we return from the commercial break, which is followed by Chad swinging Gunther over his shoulder and Tommaso's unloading blows on Giovanni Vinci. Tommaso Ciampa ends up doing a really nice running clothesline, and so does Otis. Otis ends up hitting a spinning back elbow onto Ludwig Kaiser as well. Suplex coming in from Gunther onto Chad Gable, and then Gunther goes for the powerbomb, but Chad ends up slipping through and hits a really nice ankle lock. Then he goes for the Chaos Theory on Giovanni and hits a 2 count. Tommaso hits a running knee onto Gunther, and Chad Gable ends up hitting a really nice ankle lock onto Giovanni, and it kind of looks like Giovanni's going to obviously tap out to the move. Gunther notices and runs into the ring to try and break the pin up, but Tommaso Ciampa catches Gunther in a Sicilian stretch, which then Gunther's watching Giovanni, struggling in this ankle lock, and I was like, I love this. I love that it's Tommaso doing this, so maybe he could be another contender for Gunther. But then Giovanni Vinci ends up tapping out, and the Alpha Academy and Tommaso Ciampa win this match. I really liked the inclusion of Tommaso Ciampa alongside the Alpha Academy. I think it's only a matter of time before we see DIY reunite, but I really enjoyed this match. I think it was great. And Tommaso got a really good showing as well too, which I'm so incredibly here for. Then we see the Judgment Days backstage, and Finn is talking before the promo starts, and then as soon as the camera comes, we go ahead and hear him say that, you know, we really need to keep pressure on main event Jey Uso if we want him to be a part of the Judgment Day. And Damien goes ahead and says, you know, man, I totally agree. The more he feels isolated, the more he will want to join us. And Rhea says, absolutely. They always want to come to be around us. And Dominic goes ahead and says, you know, I really wish I could be out there with you tonight. And Rhea says, it's okay, I'll handle Rhea on my own because Mami's always on top. Then this is followed by Adam and Tiffany Stratton having a contract signing. Now we have the match between Tiffany Stratton and Becky Lynch happening on NXT tomorrow night. So Shawn Michaels and Adam Pearce thought it would be a good idea to set up a contract signing for the match. And Tiffany's already complaining, you know, about how there was no red carpet treatment for her and how it's not fair and she's got champ things to do and real responsibilities. So Becky Lynch comes in and she's like, sup Adam, and they start getting the contract signing going, and Tiffany goes ahead and says, look, I've been nothing but respectful and kind to you, and I apologized for calling you an NXT champion when you're not one, and says that, you know, last week my emotions really got the best of me, but while I've got you here now, I really want to know what I did to you and why you're coming after me in the championship. And I already knew as soon as Becky got the chance, she was gonna roast Tiffany. So Becky goes ahead and says that, you know, I wasn't paying attention to you before this moment, but because you've gone ahead and decided to call me out and come to my show, I'm now going to keep my eyes on your dead-end title reign. And she says that you want to use my name in vain and appear during my matches. I've got no choice but to pay attention to you. And she says, look, Tiffany, you've got everything you need. You're built like a goddess. You're athletic as an Olympian. I mean, dumb as a box of rocks. And I was like, she didn't just call her a box of rocks. And she says, you know, NXT is about the future. It's about passion and it's about hope. You could have all of that, but unfortunately you don't. And she goes ahead and says, you know, you're too concerned about being famous and you're too concerned about your name. And Tiffany goes ahead and says that, you know, I don't need you and I've never needed you before this moment because I've been doing fine on my own. And she says, you know, I'll have no problem making myself famous of your name. So I'm really looking forward to this match between Becky and Tiffany. These are two of my favourite women's wrestlers, so I'm so looking forward to this match on NXT. Then we had the main event match between Raquel Rodriguez and Rhea Ripley. Now, straight away from the bat, this was set to be a big match feel. We obviously had Samantha Irvin in the middle of the ring, obviously announcing the competitors for this match, which gave it a really big fight feel. Straight away, Raquel is setting the tone early. She starts going in strong, going in hot, hitting a really nice buckle bomb and clothesline onto Rhea, hitting a really good power slam as well onto Rhea, and then getting Rhea in like a bear hug as well too. Rhea's trying to fight out of it and ends up doing so, and then hits a missile dropkick onto Raquel. There's this really cool moment when they're both outside of the ring where Rhea uses the outside ring steps and jumps on them and then flips and ends up like tackling Raquel as well too, which I really enjoyed it. Raquel hits a really nice Rhea ends up hitting a really nice drop kick, which slows the pace down of the match. But then Raquel ends up launching Rhea out of the ring and then ends up driving her into the barricade. We hit the commercial break. After the commercial break, Rhea's really dominating over Raquel. Raquel goes face first into the turnbuckle. Then Raquel ends up throwing Rhea into the turnbuckle and they're exchanging forearms between each other. There's this move where they both hit like a double boot on each other and end up falling to the ground. They're then exchanging blows as well too, and then Rhea goes to suplex Raquel. But Raquel's speeding up the pace and goes for a corkscrew elbow, but then Rhea ends up missing her move as well too, so she ends up moving out of Raquel's way, so doesn't end up getting the impact of the corkscrew elbow. Rhea hits a really nice cannonball, and then Raquel ends up trying to swing Rhea into the commentator's table and the apron, when none other than Nia JAX decides to come out and drop Raquel Rodriguez, but then Rhea ends up hitting the riptide on Raquel and comes away with the win, which I'm so excited that Rhea won. Nia then ends up coming into the ring, headbutts Rhea and hits her with a leg drop and then drops on Rhea. Triple H, do you think you're funny? Do you think you're funny? You think you're clever? Why are we bringing Nia Jax back? Like, please just explain that to me. Because the division's been fine without her. I know the division always has room to improve. I totally get that. But why Nia? You honestly have a feud right there that you could set up between Rhea and Piper. Why do you have to bring Nia Jax back? As soon as I saw that, I was in such a bad mood afterwards. I was so incredibly angry. I'm like, why? Why? Why are you going to have Rhea go ahead and put a job out on Nia Jax like that? Anyway, guys, I normally don't like to try and end these on a sour note, but to be honest, Triple H just went ahead and chose violence this morning when he woke up, so I'm going to leave it at that. That is the Monday Night Raw recap. If you stayed till the end, thank you so much for watching the video. Please make sure you go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel because that helps to push our videos out in the algorithm to find other wrestling fans like you who don't like Nia Jax like I don't. Anyway, that's not the point. I'm just getting really annoyed at the situation. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We've got an NXT review coming out from Reese later on in the week, and we'll have a SmackDown review too from either G or Ross. We're also uploading some AEW content as well too, so if that sounds like something that you're interested in, make sure you go ahead and keep up with what we're doing. We've got a podcast episode coming this week where we are ranking WWE games, wrestling games, which I'm so looking forward to. But to make sure, if you want to keep up with anything that we're doing on our personal social medias, make sure you go ahead and you follow our TikToks down in the description. We're also on Instagram as well too, so if you want to stay up to date with everything we're doing in terms of Outcasted OC, the Instagram is the perfect place to go. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.